SLO Burn Media and Bill Huffman present My Passion Case. Hello and welcome to episode 78 of Who Killed? I'm your host, Bill Huffman, and this is a SLO Burn Media production. On this week's show, we will be talking with Christine from the True Crime Files about a case up north about the murder of one Marie Leckie. It was on Tuesday, March 24th, 2009, shortly before 7 a.m. when Lisa's body was discovered by her common-law husband, Derek Stacey, when he returned home from working the night shift. Now, Lisa was only 25 at the time of her murder, and the True Crime Files have done a podcast on this case, as well as done a written article as well. So they can be found at truecrimefiles.com. And again, my conversation with Christine is all about this case, and if you guys are interested in learning more about who killed Marie Leckie, join me for this week's episode of Who Killed. This week, I am lucky enough to be joined by Christine from True Crime Files out of Canada, our friends up north. Thank you so much for joining me this week, Christine.
Thanks for having me on. I fought really hard to get out of my igloo to be able to talk to you today from the cold north, but I made it. So yeah.
Yeah, you guys have been experiencing some wild weather up there.
Yeah, I'm originally from the Vancouver, BC area, but I moved to London, Ontario around 6 years ago. And I have to say that one of the saddest losses was the moderate weather, because it's quite a shock with the minus 30 and the snow and stuff when you're not used to it. But I'm slowly acclimatizing, so that's good.
And no mountains.
No, it's very flat and there's no ocean. I find it very confusing because whenever we leave town and drive north, like where I was from in BC in the lower mainland, it was called, as soon as you drive north, like within 10 or 15 minutes, it was all these beautiful soaring mountains. And here it just seems to get flatter, but that's okay. It has its own beauty, that's for sure.
Welcome to the Midwest.
Yes.
We're happy to have you. Even if
I think there's some joke about people watching their dog run away for days. I get a little bit of that here. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. I mean, the U.S. is no different. I went to school in the University of Utah, and I would drive to school, and you could see a train. There were parts of the country where you could see the start of the train and the end of the train just from the highway. It's like,
okay, that's hilarious.
All right, well, this is pretty flat and barren.
Oh no. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a different landscape and weather pattern that I'm used to, but yeah, I'm slowly fitting in. So that's good. I bought my first parka and snow boots, so I think I'm good.
All right. Well, look at you. You are fitting in. So Tell me a little bit about your show.
Perfect. Well, I started a true crime website back in the summer of 2017. And on that website, I cover missing person cases and unsolved murders. I also throw in the occasional true crime book review and podcast review. But then in August of 2019, Scott Fuller he does Frozen Truth and Status Pending and Dead and Gone in Wyoming. Basically, almost every podcast you listen to, Scott's involved somehow, it seems. He reached out and said he really thought that we could leverage the articles into short format true crime podcasts. So that's what we've done. I met him back when I was on Frozen Truth with him for a couple episodes. So I still have the true crime blog/website. It's pretty active. And then we now have a podcast every couple weeks where we turn one of the articles into a podcast episode. And I really like it because it helps me kind of like get more people to know about the cases that I think haven't been covered much or don't get much attention. It just gets more people reading and learning about the cases. So that's why I think it's a super great project. And yeah, I couldn't thank Scott enough for the idea.
Yeah, that sounds I've been to your website. It's definitely top notch as far as formatting and all that stuff. I mean, it looks great.
Oh,
and
thanks.
I can see why Scott would have thought it would have been a good idea to turn turn it into podcasts, because basically that's kind of the way of the world at the moment. And
yeah, and I lack a bit of that technical expertise. So I had never been able to force myself yet to learn all the like how to upload shows or buy fancy microphones or anything like that yet. So it sure helps to have Scott do all of that part for me. So I just can do what I'm good at, researching and writing the content, and Scott leverages it into the podcast format. The short episode format probably isn't for everyone because they're only about 10 to 15 minutes long, but it really gives someone flavor for the case, like the background they need if they want to research more. And plus it's perfect for like if you're like throwing together your dinner or making your kids lunch, or I always listen to podcasts while I shower or stuff like that. So I think it's a good length for that kind of thing.
I don't know if that's safe.
Well, I leave my phone outside of the shower, like on a shelf, like it doesn't actually enter with me, but
yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, I would probably only do that once. So
yeah,
maybe I could buy like a waterproof speaker or something. Come to think of it, they must make those, but yeah.
I have one. It's amazing. You can actually pick it up.
So you listen to podcasts in the shower then?
I do. That's why I was kind of getting on you about
Who doesn't? This is like what I wonder. So yeah, so anyway, that's that's some history about me. I've been interested in mysteries and true crime since I was a kid. I used to hide under my covers and read true crime books like Helter Skelter, and I'll age myself a little bit here, but like tape unsolved mysteries on the family VCR. And stuff
I
like
think
that. I was a kid, so.
You're not dating yourself. That's in my wheelhouse. That was my era. I grew up on Unsolved Mysteries. Trust me. That was the music still gives me nightmares. It gives me that pit in my stomach, like, oh, I'm going to hear about something that I really don't want to hear about right now. And
yeah. Well, it might give you nightmares. It gives me kind of like good chills, because to me, it's like the unsolved mystery part that always draws me in, like trying to solve a puzzle. Right. So
yeah,
definitely.
you mentioned that you'd like to focus on the lesser known cases. And I kind of feel like that's what I try to do too. I mean, there are some cases that I covered that are obviously more known, but there are a lot of cases, more cases than you would imagine, that actually fall through the cracks as far as what the public knows about. And I think the case that we're talking about today is kind of one of those.
Right. Well, when I first moved to London, when I came to go to school at Western University here, I, of course, like I'm sure everyone does, looked at the local police services website to check out unsolved cases, because
nobody does that
when they move to a town.
No.
Okay.
No.
Oh dear. Well, I did. So, and I stumbled upon this unsolved murder case. London Police Service does a good job. They have a great website where they have like a little write-up about all the unsolved cold cases and even more current cases in the city, to hope to get tips and stuff like that. So I found a case on the murder of a young mother called Marie Leckie, and it really caught my interest. And I think it was like either the second or third article I ever wrote for my site once I started getting it going. And I think it was maybe the first or second podcast episode I asked Scott to make. So it definitely is close to my heart, and it's always kind of interested me. And yeah, it's not really written about much here in London. It's not covered much by the media, except like on anniversaries. Sometimes it's mentioned a bit. And, you know, it's one of those cases that sort of like fades into the background because it seems like nothing's going on with it.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in cases where there isn't a lot of information to go on. The anniversaries are really the only opportunities to kind of bring up new information, or at least get the public's attention, because in a lot of cases, just like Lisa's case, especially with the research that I was doing on it, I was finding that there were a lot of people from that area that were talking about, like, I don't even remember this case. I don't remember this at all. And that's such a shame, because there are some cases you can't decide or figure out why they get covered more than other cases, but for whatever reason, some of them just kind of.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, to give you a little background, just a little bit of the context as to like why this case is so interesting to me, is that, well, she was killed back in 2009. And yeah, I don't know how many of your listeners know much about London, Ontario. So I'll tell you a little bit about where we are.
Please do.
Yeah. So back in 2009, it had a population of probably a little over 350,000 people. So I would classify that as a big city, but then I don't really like big cities much. So maybe that's why to me that feels like a lot of people, but it's definitely like no Toronto or Vancouver or anything. And so it's located in Southern Ontario, which as you mentioned is in Canada, and where we really don't all live in like igloos like people think. But it's about a 2-hour drive west of Toronto. And it's definitely a university town. Like there's 2 huge schools here, Western University and Fanshawe College. And the population swells about 100,000 people during the school year. And yeah, so that's a bit of context about London. You can also tell it's a university town because anytime you walk around, there's all those red beer cups everywhere all over the ground and like pizza boxes. So yeah, so I always found that interesting because I had never seen that before I moved here either.
Sounds like every college I went to.
Yes, definitely. So I already told you how I learned about Lisa's case just by browsing. But I was really drawn to it because, as you said, it's interesting how some cases kind of like just fall to the wayside. And I'm not really sure why this happens with this case. Like her family seemed to work really hard to keep her case alive. Like her mom, Cheryl, even like sold hoodies and sweatshirts with the message that said not knowing is the real nightmare, to like try to remind people about the case and that she just wanted answers about what happened to her daughter. So like after doing what research I could, I just really focused on the case and wanted to try to help remind people that her crime is still unsolved. And on the site, it's generated a lot of comments. The family members have gotten involved and they've had discussions with each other on the site comments. From the comments, can tell there's some conflict in the family. People have different opinions and views as to what might have happened to Lisa. But I mean, if you put all that aside, they, like her sister and her grandmother and like everybody really just wants the case solved, right? So of course emotions are heightened. So, I'm just glad that there's a forum there for sure to share their feelings and insights. They have also even shared, I'm really getting drawn into the case because in the comments they've shared things that the police haven't released. I'm not sure how much of those things should be out there or if they're like, not that they're not true, but maybe filtered through multiple different people. So I don't really add those kind of details to the case article itself, but any additional information the family members feel like sharing is up there in the comments for people to read. I haven't taken them down. And then Lisa's son, Sean, reached out to me after I wrote the article, and we discussed the case and the tremendous impact it's had on him and his family. And I have a son around his age, and that really breaks my heart because I can think of all he's missed about not having a mom, right? So that really spoke to me about the case.
That was definitely one thing about, so he reached out to you. How old was he when he reached out to you?
After I wrote the article, and after his family members started commenting on the case, he sort of like just reached out to me and, thanked me for reminding people about his mom's case and that his family was just trying to get answers. And we discussed some of the comments that had been made on the site. And then he contacted me again when we turned the article into a podcast to, just say thanks again for, spreading the news of my mom. So he's now a college student. So yeah, he contacted me. I can't remember the exact date, but maybe like, I don't know, a couple of years ago kind of thing.
To put yourself out there as a child who's obviously been through a huge tragedy in the family, and then to reach out to the person that's writing about it, I think that says a lot about his maturity and the way that he's been able to handle or deal with this miserable situation, basically.
Oh yeah, like even in my communication with him, like it's obvious he's grown into a wonderful young man who I know his mother would be extraordinarily proud of. And all he wants, like I think most people would want, is answers about what happened to his mom, right? So I can't even imagine what he's been through. And I just know that he appreciates any coverage that the case gets. And I'm sure London Police Service just wants people talking about it and to keep it top of people's minds, right? So, and on the 10-year anniversary, so back in 2019, he released this like a 10-year anniversary appeal, like asking people to come forward with any information and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely not a cold case. So yeah.
Basically, how did they find Lisa's body? How did they know that there was something wrong? Who discovered her body?
So on Tuesday, March 24th, 2009, her common law husband, Derek Stacey, came home from work after he had worked the night shift. And yeah, he went into their third floor apartment and he discovered her there dead. And it was one horrible aspect of the case that remains burned in my mind is that her 8-month-old son, Rain, like their son, her and Derek's son, was at home at the time she was killed, but thankfully he was found safe in his crib. And yeah, that's always been a really haunting aspect of the case for most people who cover it, is that someone would kill the child's mother while the child was there and just leave, right? Like just leave. So anyway, and her other son, Sean, who I'd spoken about earlier, he was 8 or 9 years old at the time. I can't quite remember. But he wasn't at home. He was at the home of his father, Phil Leckie. So thankfully he wasn't home the evening this happened. Yeah. So that's when it happened and how she was found. And the London Police Service eventually released that she had been asphyxiated, and ruled it a homicide, obviously, but they never released any details about time of death or method of death or anything of that nature. So it makes it still to this day. So I haven't found anything about time of death out there. Even in the 10-year anniversary article, there was definitely more details then, but they did release something like...
Yeah, something came out of that press conference in 2019. And what was that?
Right. So what came out of that press conference that they had never released before was that a typewritten note had been found at the murder scene, which I thought I had to go update the article that I had written when this press conference happened, because I was shocked by that. There definitely wasn't much talk of that anywhere. Although what the note exactly said hasn't been released to the public, the police did say that it was written on an old impact style model typewriter with a fabric ribbon, which even in 2009 would have been like extremely rare.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right.
I used to work for used to work for a label company in Cleveland that sold like computer labels, and we owned Smith Corona, which is the typewriter. And literally the only people that bought for the typewriters were jails and prisons, because they're the only ones that still used that type of impact ribbon.
Right. So yeah, that is weird. That's great texture to know. Yeah, I had no idea, but apparently it was super rare even in 2009. So
yeah.
Family members on the site had mentioned the note and its contents, I think even before the press conference. But you never, not to doubt what anyone says, but I've learned over the years to not take every comment that appears on every article as gospel truth, that either the person leaving the comment is really who they say they are, or that it's actually factual. So I never updated the article in any way. And then this press conference came out and it sort of like supported a lot of what had been discussed. At the time of Lisa's murder, there was a potential witness that the police really wanted to talk to, which they also discussed this again, I think, at the press conference. And that always led me to believe that maybe it could have been one of those rare stranger killings, but I still would need to be sold on that. But then after this typewritten note thing came out, I pretty well took that idea off the table, right? But at the time, there was a potential witness who was seen about 15 months after Lisa's murder. They released really poor quality surveillance camera footage that captured a man from behind as he wandered along a sidewalk close to where Lisa lived. They never really said what made him a potential witness, in quotes, that they wanted to talk to.
Yeah, they don't really say. They say he's a person they just want to talk to.
Right. Which, I mean, if I was that guy, I would still be freaked out by that. But yeah. So, I mean, you can go online, and on the site, there's images of him. He looked to be around 5'10", 200 pounds, wearing jeans and a black jacket over a hoodie, which is basically most men I know. So I don't know how useful that is. But the police definitely stressed he's not a suspect and just a witness. And I think they mentioned him again, or re-released the footage at the 10-year anniversary thing. I can't quite remember, but I don't know how he could possibly be connected with the typewritten note. In my mind, it probably is for sure someone she knew.
Yeah. Like, so the way that I see that footage, the picture, one, they obviously must have released this with a little bit of desperation in hopes that somebody is going to recognize the clothing that this person's wearing, because there is literally no way to determine what this person looks like from the front.
Right. It's like the back of some guy.
Like, it could be anybody.
Right. Right.
So,
and in my mind, his clothing isn't really that like his clothing doesn't stand out as different. Like, there's no insignia on the jacket, or no, like, that I could see, like anything that would make it markedly noticeable if I saw someone else wearing that jacket later. It just looked like jeans and a jacket over a hoodie or something to me.
Yeah, it wasn't like a Canada Goose jacket or something like that.
No,
that would stand out.
Right.
But if you want to see,
footage, I
was going to say, if you want to see the picture, go to the truecrimefiles.com and just look up Lisa Leckie murder, and the pictures, you have the picture on the website. So,
I can't even tell from the picture if the guy's wearing a hat or if he just has the weirdest hair. Like, I spent a long time staring at it, trying to figure that out. I don't know. Anyway, that shows you what a bad quality photo it is. But I mean, they could only work with what they had, right? Like, the police have definitely, it's not like they haven't done their best. Like, I think the case is far from cold. Like, over the last 10 years, I read that 80 different officers have worked on the case, and they've had over 300 interviews, and that it's still open and active. And they did this big press conference type thing on the 10-year anniversary. So they're definitely not giving up. So, but I mean,
so what's your feeling about the individual they released this picture of? Because how close is it from when this picture was taken to when Derek finds the body?
I don't even know. Like, can you tell the timestamp on there?
Yeah, the timestamp. Yeah, there's a timestamp on it's 3:23 at 21:12:42.
Right.
So it's basically what 8:30 or 8:15 or 9:15. I don't even.
Right, and like, they found the body at 7 a.m. when he got home from work. So I don't know what makes them suspicious of this person. Does this have, like, they haven't said, like, does this happen to be the only person who wandered by the camera? Like, the only male? Are they sure it was a male? I have no idea why they focused on this person. Like, they must have some other reason that he's a witness they want to talk to you. Like, right? Like, they didn't release photos of other people who wandered by.
Yeah, generally speaking, when you see something like the numbers that you were just talking about, and having hope that, 80 officers have done 300 interviews. I mean, I've done some cases where I've had, 100 officers doing 10,000 interviews, and it still doesn't get you anywhere. It's just like,
right.
You're just chasing your tail because you really don't know what the hell you're looking for. And from this case, at least from my perspective, is we literally are chasing this guy's tail if this is the perpetrator, because we can only see him from the backside. And that is a problem. And
right.
But there's a reason why they are saying, oh, he's just a
witness.
Because they're trying to make him comfortable with the idea that it's cool to come in and talk to the police. Like, no worries, don't bring a lawyer, no worries.
Right. I would be totally interested in learning what exactly about this person made them choose him to be the potential witness, right? Like, maybe he's the only person that walked by in hours, maybe, right? Like, maybe
well,
this
it doesn't
is the
look
only
busy.
camera. Right. So maybe because of the time, this is the only person they have. Maybe that's what it is. But I've always wondered. I mean, anything you read about the case, it typically boils down to if it was someone who knew her, that it might have been either her ex-husband or her common law partner, right? Like usually when women are murdered, it's by someone they know who's close to them.
Yeah, like we said before, we even started, it's the murder of the week. It's always the
Right.
husband.
Right. And so when I first learned about the case, before I got the confirmation about the note and stuff, I thought, well, maybe it is this person from the surveillance video. And like, if they can't figure out who it is, I thought maybe he's almost a stranger to Lisa, if not an actual stranger, where stranger killings, I think, are much more rare. Right. But I mean, her ex, Phil Leckie, he seemed really broken up from what I saw about her murder. Like he told the media about how, him and Sean were trying to move on and how hard it had been and how it was the loss of Sean's mother and how much she was loved and what a huge part of their lives she was. Like, I mean, the police haven't cleared anyone as a suspect, and you never know from what people say, but it just really seems unlikely that he was involved. And then the common law partner, Derek, who found her, like, I couldn't really find much out there about their relationship. I mean, because they've played it so close to the vest and haven't released like estimated time of death, or maybe they don't know for some reason. It's hard to know like when he left for work, when he came home, but I don't know.
Yeah, because that's kind of my next question is like, so what time did he go to work that night? And did he see her alive when he left?
Right. Like, I'm assuming he must have seen her alive when he left.
I would hope so.
Yep. Like, I haven't been able to find that I could see like when he left, but if you just go, like, I mean, if you work backwards, you would say he would probably leave around 10. Like most people might work like 11 to 7. So he gets off at 7 a.m. So if you work backwards, right? Like if he had an 8-9 hour shift, right? Like 10 or 11, he'd probably be leaving. But like, I think it would like
the surveillance pictures before that.
Right. So I don't know. And the police haven't ever said he was a suspect. He would have had to have murdered the mother of his child and left his child there with her all night while he was at work, right?
There's a whole lot of jumping to conclusions on that one. If he's going to be the perpetrator,
right? I find that like
really
I would like to say impossible for someone to do, but then from all the true crime research and writing that I do, I know that isn't the case. But I would say it's extremely rare.
We're distorted.
Right. So I would like to think as a human being that is extremely rare, and no one has come forward and said that he seems like the type of person capable of doing something like that. So the police have not ever said either Phil or Derek are suspects. They have never ruled either of them out, but it's just as the circle closes more with the note, and now the police are saying that they're fairly sure at the press conference that it's, that the murderer was someone new to Lisa, right? Like someone knew her. She knew who killed her. How well she knew them remains up in the air. Was it someone she was intimate with? That's sadly commonly the case, but it's definitely looking more like someone knew her.
How long had Lisa lived in the place that she was actually found dead?
That I do not know. I never found that. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Are you familiar with the housing that she lived in? Because that picture that they do show, I think I've read that was from a surveillance video from the building. Am I correct?
Yeah. She lived in a third floor apartment on Southdale Road East in London, and it's not the best or prettiest neighborhood, but it's an average size apartment building in a average type neighborhood. Like it's not in the bad part of town, in the great part of town. It's just where anyone could live, right? Like there was nothing about the location that stuck out to me.
It wasn't like they were living in like you said, the bad part of town, but not to characterize it, but not living in the ghetto or anything like that.
it was just, average part of town, your average apartment building, just a few stories high, not, like, I don't think there was anything about the apartment building that jumped out at me, but also, like, I don't think the police ever really mentioned, like, was there forced entry? Did she let the person in? What is the possible time of death? Like, they're just keeping lots of information to themselves, of course, to protect the integrity of the case, which makes sense. But then, like, it just makes it really difficult to come to any possible conclusions about suspects or anything. So they know way more than we do, which is good. They're the people that need to know it. So all we can work with is what little we know. And as the years pass, it seems like maybe they'll release more and more. Like they release the information about the note, right? So
yeah. This week's episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. This summer, HelloFresh is here to take the work out of eating well. Reach your goals with delicious, calorie-smart and protein-smart lunch and dinner options, plus new vegan recipes too. HelloFresh makes entertaining easy with a selection of crowd-pleasing eats like their bratwurst bar with caramelized onions, Dijonnaise slaw, and pineapple relish, or a snack board with pretzel bites, spiced bar nuts, and hot honey peach jam. So go to HelloFresh.com/whokilled16 and use the code whokilled16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/whokilled16 and use whokilled16 for 16 meals plus free shipping. I mean, I've covered cases before where they've waited. I mean, the first case I ever covered, they waited 27 years before they released a couple items that they found at the crime scene that could have been part of the transportation of the body or something along those lines. And it was like, well, why did they wait so long? And when I interviewed the chief of police, he was like, dude, in 1989, if you sent that to the FBI, they wouldn't even know what to do with it. So,
right.
We just held on to it until the technology got there. So maybe
that's such a long amount of time. Yeah. Like,
oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Like, I've always hoped maybe they have DNA. Maybe they, I don't know, like maybe, but if they have DNA, then you think they could have ruled out the people closest to her by now, right?
Yeah,
because they could have easily checked that. So I don't know if they have DNA because they haven't said. I don't know what kind of forensic evidence they found at the scene. It's definitely not covered very often, this case. So there's just not a lot of information out there.
Why is this a passion case? Is it because of the fact that there's such little information being distributed to the public and they're asking for the public's help? Is that one of the reasons?
Definitely. So they're asking for the public's help. So that's what makes this a passion case. I feel like we can help. I can write about it. I can share the case with people. That's the one small way I can help, is by getting the name out there. Plus, I feel passionate about the case after the connection I've made with Lisa's family. So yeah, it's definitely those reasons. Yeah.
And as far as Sean goes, I mean, have you maintained somewhat of a communication with him?
I think I last emailed back and forth with him when the podcast episode came out about his mom's case. And yeah, so that was the last time we talked. And I'll probably send him an email after this is up to let him know that we've worked again harder to get news about his mom's case out there. And I'll send him a link.
Well, bring it to the States.
Yeah.
And one thing about London, so it's 2 hours west of Toronto. And I think I told you I used to go to Toronto all the time before I was 21 and would go up there and,
drink.
And drink.
Come on, let's just be honest.
Let's just be honest. They had a hell of a club scene and it was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. And it was really, really, really cool time. But nonetheless, I'm also a sailor. So I have been to the other side of Lake Erie and been to certain parts of Canada that most people never been from
Right.
my part of the state, at least. And I would say that, there's a lot of, it's a beautiful area, but it's definitely no Vancouver.
That is true. That is true. I've learned that. But I mean, the Great Lakes are beautiful. Like I was
Oh,
stunned. I was stunned the first time I saw one. I'm like, okay, this is almost oceany. Like it's big enough that like there's waves and like you can't see across it. So
that's
I'm
the
like,
number one thing people don't understand when you explain what a Great Lake is to them. They're like, wait, it's a lake. And I'm like, no, we're
yeah,
sailors.
but wait, it's great. Like
Yeah,
that means it's big. Like, I mean, it's in the title, right? It's
it's in
one
the
of the
title,
Great
damn it.
Lakes.
You can't
It's
see
big.
across. You can't see across. Just
Right.
trust me.
It's great. It's big. It doesn't mean great like good. It's great. It's
Yeah, it doesn't
big.
mean not polluted. It just means it's
Right.
just
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that. So like, especially some of them. But like, yeah, I think it's important also to bring this case to the States if it was someone who was just traveling through, which would be super weird, I think. But who knows? Like, we're not that far from the border,
well, when
right? I
you have
think
when you
it's
have a case
like,
that goes 10 years unsolved, and like you said, they've kept a lot of stuff close to the vest. It might also be that they don't have a lot, and if they don't have a lot, then that puts more theory into the stranger. And I know that's much more uncommon, but
definitely.
it happens. It does
It does.
happen. I mean, it could still be that one guy that just randomly saw her going into her apartment and decided, well, today is the day I'm going to be a murderer. And
But first, let me stop at home and whip up this typewritten note on this old archaic typewriter. And like that.
that's a good. Now, see, when you throw that out there, that fucks my whole theory up. Not to pardon my
Yeah,
French,
sorry about that. Oh,
pardon
that's
my
okay.
French, but
So except if it was someone who was stalking her for a while, then that's possible, right? Like maybe then they could pre-plan that, I guess. I think it makes it much more unlikely. As soon as I read about the note and stuff and the like, yeah, I don't want to say what the rumor is that's in the note because the police haven't released it, but if you read the comment section on the site, it's there. And if that's true what was in the note, it just makes it even more bizarre.
it is
So
bizarre. I looked it up. And if you do want to find it, you can find it. I'm not going to say what it
yeah.
is, but
Yeah, because I don't know if it's true. The police haven't released that information. So I don't want to
but
talk
it's
about
so bizarre. If it is,
right. So
if it
then
is
like what
that,
the hell does that do to the case? Like who does that suggest it is?
I
Like
don't know,
I
Paul Bettany.
yes. He is very pale. So like I suppose that could be true. So yeah, so I don't know. I have no
He was
idea what's
really
going on.
vicious in Wimbledon, I tell you.
Yes, that is true. Wasn't he also the bad guy in one of like the Da
He was
Vinci
a
Code
bad guy.
movie or
That's
something?
exactly why I'm
Or like I
referencing.
think it was
That's
the
why I'm
second
referencing.
one, right?
No, it was the first
Yeah.
one. That's why I'm
Oh, was
referencing
it?
him.
Yeah. He's well, I thought it was because he was very pale and creepy. So
Well,
yeah,
they're all
definitely.
anybody who's pale and creepy are generally killers. I mean, that's
Yes,
just.
yes. Oh no, I can just imagine the listener mail you're gonna get now from all the pale people out there.
Oh, don't
So
worry. 80% of my listeners are female. It's okay.
that is also a strange true crime thing, but what can you do about that?
But that is a true fact, though.
Yeah, I think women are interested in mysteries and yeah,
And
I
being able
think
to
that's a part of it.
know a little bit about how to
How to
protect
protect
themselves.
themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the more informed you are about bad things that happen, maybe the more knowledge you have, as you said, to help not have them happen to yourself, right? So,
Yeah, even if it's
yeah,
like a false, like it's kind of
a
like a
false sense of
placebo.
security. Yeah.
Exact, a false sense of security. You're right. And
Yeah.
but again, it makes you question. At least look around and double check your environment before you do something. I mean, when
Right.
you're
I've read
aware.
countless articles about why women are drawn to true crime. And I don't know, I think that you can't lump all women together in one category and that
No.
every person, whether male or female, has their own particular individual reasons for why they get interested in it. I think that you shouldn't lump everybody in together with, oh, it's because women want to protect themselves, or, oh, it's because women like to solve mysteries. I know why I'm interested, but I don't know why the person across the street might be, right? So,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. I would never try to imply that my interest in true crime is the same interests that other people have, or,
Right.
again, it's
Sometimes it just makes me mad to hear people paint everyone with the same brush, no matter who those people are, right?
broad
So,
strokes. Nobody likes
yes,
broad strokes.
nobody does. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with this case other than I share the article often. I talk about it whenever I can.
You're doing this.
Yeah, I'm doing this. I mean, I don't know what else to do other than just keep hoping that somehow her loved ones can get the answers they need.
Well, the fact that she has a son out there who's of,
Two sons,
well,
yeah,
two sons, one of who's what,
in college now. Yeah,
8, 9 years older than the youngest.
yeah.
Um, he can actually make a huge impact on the case by being a spokesperson for the. Now, it's not like I don't want to put the pressure on him, like he has to be that guy,
Well,
because
he's already, I think he's already stepped up and taken on that role at the press conference, if you watch it. So
hmm
definitely you're not putting pressure on him to take on that role. I think he's already embraced it. I
well,
can't
that's
imagine
good.
how hard that must be for him, but yeah, it just shows his strength and conviction, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's what drives a lot of these cases. And if these cases are eventually going to be solved, it is going to take a lot of passion, because they're not generally thought of after they've kind of gone through the system. I know that we have a cold case unit, we have a this, that, and the other, and they'll always look back at old crimes. And I know that cold cases has become a 4-letter word in a lot of police departments, and I don't know if that's always been the case, but I've noticed it a lot in the last couple of years as far as
Yeah,
interviews have
me
gone.
too, because they try to say no
It's
case is
not
cold.
no case is cold, but it's always active. We
Except it's in a file back there in the filing cabinet and no one's read it for 10 years. But other than that,
like,
like,
yeah, we
it's
still
like,
have an open file, but yeah, it hasn't actually been opened. It's like, okay,
right.
all
So,
right.
but I do understand their view. They don't want to have it look like they've given up, right? And often they haven't given up. They just lack the resources to dedicate time when new cases keep coming in. So
I mean,
I
I
know
loved
that,
cold case files, like when I was
yeah.
like a teenager, and Bill Curtis. I had just a really, really quick random story. I worked for the general manager at the CBS affiliate here in Cleveland, and he was actually a coworker of Bill Curtis's in
Oh my
Chicago.
gosh.
And I was
What a
like,
small world.
you got to work with Bill Curtis. And I mean, this guy was older, so he had worked with a million people. But I was like, wow, you got to work with Bill Curtis. I loved him in American Justice.
Oh my gosh.
That was probably like his swan song.
Okay, that's hilarious.
I had to throw it out there. It's just one of those random, just random.
Factoids that listeners love to know about you.
Hey, it is what it is.
Yep.
But no, it is important for cases like this to be continued to be pursued by people like yourself and like Sean, and obviously the family is always going to be committed to finding answers. But
Right.
you're dedicating an hour plus and many, many, many hours of research, I'm sure, into this case,
Definitely, yeah.
looking for an answer. And I just hope that at the very least we bring some information to the police. And
Right.
what what's
I kind of feel like they're on the verge. Like they just need that one person to come forward with that little bit of information that they need, like the last piece of the puzzle. Like I would be surprised. I think, as you said earlier, they either have no idea who did it, which is one option, right? Like that's a
Mhm.
possibility. Or I feel probably what's more likely is they have a good suspicion of who they think did it, but just don't have quite enough to prove it yet, is probably what I'm leaning towards more. So I think they're just waiting, as you say, for like that one little thing that they need.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And
I've heard that a number of times, and I don't know if I can always
Hopefully it's true.
I hope it's
But
true, but it's one of those, I feel like if they knew who it was, the interviews are kind of low, the amount of them. So they must know something because 300
right.
interviews is nothing.
Unless she didn't have that big of a circle. I'm
True.
not sure where she worked. Like there's so little out there about the case, right? I don't know. Did she work? Did she just stay home? Did she like was there only family and close friends and people in the apartment to interview? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how like different people have different circles, like all different social circles with different amounts of people, right? Like I'm really busy with work and my true crime thing. Like
Yeah, I was
they
gonna say
might
yours.
not need to interview more than 300 people with me, and then they might cover everyone I've ever talked to. And like,
I
that's
was gonna say
wild, right?
bullshit, like bullshit on that because like they could be like interviewing
Oh, I
everybody that read
guess,
your
right.
website.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
all of
true.
that. I mean, think about how many people you've
Right. Had
reached and
some
ever.
kind of contact with.
Exactly. Those are the
Right.
things that make the numbers jump, and that's
Yeah, but
why
maybe she didn't have that type of life, right? Like it's hard to know. I,
that's
but
unfortunate.
I like your perspective that maybe that's why there's such a small amount of interviews. Maybe it's because they kind of might know something, but like there's a difference between knowing something and proving something.
Oh, that's I run into that more often than you would imagine, and I'm sure you do too, because
Yep, but
that
it's true though.
it's a cliche, but it is true, and it's we're one tip away, we're one step away. The public is key, this, that, and the other, but it's
And
so.
that always pisses me off when it seems like they say that and then have stopped working on it, but that isn't what I think is the case here. Like I feel like that is the case that they need more information, but I don't feel like they're just saying that but not actively also looking for information and
Yeah, like
working the case, right?
that.
Like it feels like it's still active to me, like with the big like 10-year anniversary thing they did with the interviews and like and like the press conference and like yeah it definitely and like it's still on their website and they talk about it whenever I guess they get the chance. I don't know, I feel like, and from just what Sean's told me, it seems like he is not unhappy with the work the police have done or are doing,
Hmm.
right? Like it seems like he feels, from I don't want to speak for him, but just from the few interactions I've had with him, he seems like he still has a really good relationship with the police, and I think he feels maybe that they're working together, right? So it feels to me like it's still definitely not, as we were talking about, a cold case by far. It still feels like there's a
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, even the case that I've started with is 30 years old, and actually today that we're recording is the 30-year anniversary of when the body was discovered of Amy Mahalovic, and that's the case that started me in the whole podcast genre. But um, but I'll say this about the anniversaries and the release of the trickle of information and stuff like that. It's like they're trying to draw out somebody and
Right.
bring that person or somebody who knows that person out into the forefront and say, hey, by the way, this guy, because a lot of times you get, and I've run into this too, and I'm sure you have again as well, of cases where they release a suspect's picture or composite sketch, and then all of a sudden ex-wives and ex-girlfriends or people that have a grudge against that person will accuse that person of being the killer. And I know
Right.
that in the case that I covered in my first podcast, that happened a number of times. And that's just insane.
It's bonkers.
It's
Yeah.
bonkers. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. So I hope that this will at least bring more attention to the case and will maybe drive some more publicity as far as what's been written about it. I know that you've been able to carry the torch for a long time, and it seems like between you and Sean,
Yeah.
uh,
Between us.
it's pretty much a two-person show. So I would say that getting the information out there is key. And again, we are literally just across the lake. We're not that far away from each other. So, we've been talking about this case and we're getting the information out there, and now we brought the case to the States. And what would somebody do if they had any information about this case?
Okay, anyone with any information should contact London Police Service at 519-661-5670 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. So if anyone knows anything that could help, maybe if they're the murderer and want to clear their conscience, this is how they can do that, is by calling those numbers.
And with Crime Stoppers, and I'm assuming with the police as well, you can remain anonymous.
With the police, I'm not sure. With Crime Stoppers, you can.
Okay. Is there a reward being offered for any information?
Not that I had ever seen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I do hope that with this episode, we do bring some more attention and some tips to Crime Stoppers and to the London Police Service. And hopefully Lisa's family will be able to one day be able to close this chapter. We'll never be able to have closure because, again, in this business and in this industry, there is no such thing as closure for somebody who loses a family member. So all we can hope is for resolution. And
definitely. Well, thanks for letting me come on today, Bill, and talk about my passion case. I really appreciate the opportunity and the opportunity to share Lisa's case, and hope to help in any other way that we can. So
thanks so much for coming on. I love having people from up north come on the show, and tell all your Canadian friends to come on my passion case, because I've already talked to Robin Warder. And
he's amazing. I just listened to his recent podcast earlier today. I love his show.
Yeah.
And Minds of Madness, set in Toronto. I research and write for them, for Tyler and Beck. Yeah, they're incredible too. So
yeah, dude, give me all your pluggables.
Right. Okay.
As my favorite podcaster, Robert Evans, at the moment says.
That's funny. Well, you can check out my true crime site at thetruecrimefiles.com. Scott Fuller, as I mentioned, has turned my articles into podcast episodes. They're available on any podcast platform. It's called The True Crime Files. And you can listen to episode on Lisa's case on there. Plus we probably have about 15 other ones done already, 10 to 15. What else? I research and write for the Minds of Madness. They're a fantastic podcast in Toronto, which is also in Southern Ontario.
And my favorite city in the up north.
Well, I think they're more like Scarborough, but people don't really know what that is. So yeah, I always just
I don't know what that is. So
so we'll just say Toronto. Tyler and Beck are amazing people, and their podcast is great. So you should definitely check that out.
And hopefully they'll be on the show soon.
Right. And let me think. The True Crime Files has a Facebook page, and we're on Twitter, and we're very active on both of those.
And what's your Twitter handle?
At the TC Files. I'm pretty sure. I haven't looked at my Twitter handle in a while. Like, I'm on there all the time. But now I'm like on, it's at the TC Files. Yeah. Hey, I just go on it and share things and tweet. I don't stare at my Twitter handle.
Well, no, it's one thing I do like about Twitter is that it is fun to read an article that you want to share and be able to share it with the people that you are like somewhat in the business with, and
definitely. And I think Twitter is where I find like a lot of the new podcasts I want to check out, and like
that's how we got hooked up.
Yes. So yeah, it's a great world. Well, I mean, that might be an exaggeration. It's an
don't go too far.
I went a bit too far there.
We're in the midst of coronavirus and some crazy orange guy running something that I don't want to call what he is. So anyway, on that note,
that feels like a good way to end it.
we live in a fabulous world, and I do appreciate you coming on the show.
Great. Well, thanks
I
again.
really do.
It's been wonderful to chat.
At the end of this episode, I'm going to play a plea from Sean Leckie, who was Lisa's son, and it's pretty interesting to hear from this young man and his desire to see his mother's murder solved. So please stay tuned after this episode to listen to Sean's plea for answers. Thank you guys again for listening. Many thanks to Christine from the True Crime Files for joining me this week on Who Killed. As you've noticed, I've started to merge some of My Passion Case episodes into the Who Killed feed. So you will be able to find both shows on the Who Killed feed moving forward. Now, if you have any information regarding Lisa's disappearance, Christine did give you guys a bunch of numbers to call, but I will provide those in the show notes as well. You can also submit a tip anonymously via Crime Stoppers. If you enjoy the shows that I produce, you can help support me by clicking on the left-hand side of slowburnmedia.com. That is slow minus the W. You can also make a contribution to the show via PayPal with my username billhuffman123@yahoo.com or via Venmo at bill-huffman-3. I will also provide a link in the show notes. And it does really help keep these shows running. You can help support the show also by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Those 5 stars help keep the cases that I cover in the spotlight. So again, if you'd like to stay up to date on the cases that I have in the pipeline or that I've covered in the past and anything that I have produced, follow me on Twitter at BillHuffman3. And with everything that's going on in this crazy world, I just want to thank you again for listening. And until next time, please stay healthy and be safe.
I was definitely a mother's boy, just by the nature of my upbringing. My father was the working man and the more strict parent, and my mother was a very kind woman. She wasn't perfect, but she did everything she knew to do to raise her 2 kids. She faced many struggles in life, just like anyone else. It's unbelievable that 10 years ago, she was taken from us, from myself, my brother, her fiance, her family, my father's family. It affected everyone who had come in contact with her to know that someone so special to us could be gone in an instant. It feels like forever ago and yesterday all at once, and I know that makes no sense, but anyone who has experienced loss can understand it. 10 years ago, I was an 8-year-old boy making his way through life, just learning who I was. That morning when the news broke, I was in denial. It did hit me then, but it wasn't until a few weeks later that it all set in. Many days I would just stay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how any of it could have happened. I didn't know how to feel. It was my first hard loss, and it really changed how I deal with loss today. I was unmotivated in everything I did for the next few months. Every time something new would happen, I think she's not here. She's not here to see me get glasses. She's not here to see me graduate 4th grade, play an instrument, find who I was. I couldn't imagine anyone who would want to hurt her, and I still can't. I'm taking those words right from my great-grandfather, but I mean them. And so here we are 10 years later. I'm in college. I have a love life. And she didn't get to see any of that happen. And she wasn't there to support me. I just want you to think about yourself in such a situation. I don't want sympathy. I just want it over with. I want to know why someone would want to hurt my mother and everyone around her so badly. If you have any info, please come forward. Even the smallest thing. Reporting it can do nothing but help the case along. And it doesn't take very much of your time. Thank you.
Hi, podcast listeners. I'm Carol Costello, a former CNN anchor and national correspondent. This January, I'm launching a podcast about one of the first cases I ever covered as a journalist. It's one that stuck with me all of these years, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. It's a true crime series about an amazing woman named Phyllis Cottle, who defied torture and death and brought a fierce rage to the quest to find her attacker. Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. It's a production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Hello out there! Yes, hello out there, everyone. I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. Together we host None But the Brave, a podcast dedicated to the music and career of Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce and E Street Band are on tour right now for the first time in 6 years, and we're taking a detailed look at what's happening on stage in our bi-weekly episodes.
We've also been recently joined by some very exciting guests, including rock journalist Warren Zanes and Stephen Hayden, Backstreet's Magazine founder Charles Cross, and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
If you're a diehard Springsteen fan, this is the show for you.
So please subscribe to None But the Brave on your favorite podcasting platform, and we hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you.